So my last video got cut off because I can only record for 5 minutes on the platform that I'm using. So I'm just going to continue here with part two. And like I went through most to least, I'm just going to kind of quickly summarize what I just said. So most to least, you're doing full physical, partial, model, verbal, gestural, and then the overall goals for the client to be at independent, which is where the client grabs the door and they open it themselves. That's what we want. We want them to be independent. So now I'm just going to walk through this. Well, technically, I put independent in here as a seventh level of prompting, but it's not a level of prompting, but I just thought it was important to clarify independent and why we want independent. So independent is zero prompting. The client demonstrates this skill independently. You don't have to gesture to the door. You don't have to model, verbal, partial. You don't have to do any of those prompts. The client does it completely on their own. For example, a client sees that their shoe is untied. They tie it on their own. They don't need any prompts to realize that they need to tie their shoe. And they don't need any prompts on how to tie their shoe. And I kind of go over both of those examples in the next following slides. So then the next one in the prompt hierarchy is visual prompting. It is a cue or a picture that is used. The client sees the information on the cue or picture and then demonstrates the correct skills. Some types of visual prompts are visual schedules, videos, written directions, flashing card with the correct answer, pictures with steps, etc. So for an example that I use with all of the levels in the next following slides is how to tie a shoe. So the example that would be used for a visual prompt would be an actual picture of the steps on how to tie a shoe. And if that's not what they need help prompting, maybe this client just needs help prompting, realizing when they need to tie their shoe. The person can pull up a picture, like there could be a picture on like a little card of somebody's shoes who is untied, and this will click for the client to look down at their shoe and they'll realize that it's untied. Because if you're gesturing down to the shoe, that wouldn't be a visual prompt anymore. It would be a gesture prompt. The next prompting level is verbal prompting. The instructor provides a verbal prompt to the learner. So this is the most basic one. For example, please tie your shoe, or please look down at your shoe, it's untied. And maybe they need help with the steps. This is where you can walk them through the entire step. First, the rabbit goes around the loop, then around the tree. I don't actually remember the exact saying that it used to be, but you verbally go through the entire directions with them. The next one is gestural prompts. This is one that I notice I use a lot with my client because that's what he responds to the most. I wouldn't use it if he didn't respond to it, but that's his prompt level that he's at on most of his skill acquisition targets. So gestural prompts are the use of any types of gesture or action that the client can observe the instructor using. Some types of gestures are nodding, pointing, head pointing. Sometimes I do that so they click it together what they need to do. So for example, a learner is learning to tie their shoes, but they do not know all of the steps. They start tying their shoes, but ask for help. The instructor can gesture to the next step that they need to complete on their shoe tying. Another example is the instructor points to the spot that points to the next step that they need to do to complete their shoe tying. And then we have model prompting. The instructor demonstrates the steps that is requested of the learner. For example, back to the shoe tying, the instructor models how to tie their shoe for the learner to observe, and then they can do it themselves. The instructor can bend down, tie their own shoe, and then say, do this, tie their shoe, and then the client will tie their shoe. Partial physical prompting. The instructor provides a gentle nudge or touch to the learner to guide them to complete the task. For example, the instructor touches the learner's arms and then touches the client's shoes. Partial physical can look completely different depending on the desired behavior. For example, the learner ties their shoes independently, but they need partial physical prompting to complete the double knotting section of the shoe tying. And then the last one is full physical prompting, which is hand-over-hand prompts. You keep the instructor's hands on top for the learners to help guide them to the correct step. For example, the instructor uses hand-over-hand prompts to help the learner to tie their shoes through the entire process. So hand over hand, this is how we're tying your shoe. And these are my references. Thank you so much.